Well, while the Greek economy's woes are dominating these elections, there are signs of recovery. Greece remains Europe's most indebted nation, but Bloomberg says returns from its bonds have been solid, over 20% this year. They're the Eurozone's best performing debt despite the high risk. Its stock market has also been one of the world's best performing bourses, gaining 40% in 2019 so far. Well, for more on Greece, I spoke with Pavlos Efthymiou. He's a risk and geopolitics analyst from Cambridge University and executive director of the Hellenic Entrepreneurs Association. And he began by discussing how events over the last few years have shaped the road to the upcoming vote.
Well, let's take it back to the Euro elections. This was a very decisive moment for Greek politics. Nobody was expecting the size of this difference. The polls were predicting it, but yet you would see analysts and experts being cautious regarding the size of the extent of the difference between the first and the second party. The Prime Minister had given it a dimension of a vote of confidence to the government. So the actual Euro elections had become a form of a referendum of whether we want this government to stay or whether we want to change. So the expected small difference ended up being a very, very big difference in excess of 8 points, over 9 points. This was very decisive, and in the end, the Prime Minister reconsidered and called early snap elections on the same evening. So this was the change of the course. If you ask me, there was a resentment towards the current government, and all the efforts to upturn this by a series of measures like a series of benefits that were announced right before the Euro elections that were not of a small size. Aggregatively, they were in excess of 1 billion, which for the Greek market is a very big number.
And we know that in 2015, when Tsipras and his party came to power, his party said they were going to be the ones to end this austerity. So I know you mentioned that they added these sort of last-ditch efforts right before the election. But how do you see Tsipras's future then, based on what he's achieved since then?
Well, as you very aptly point out, this government's policy of ripping up the memorandums in the beginning was upturned. And he kept on going that we're changing towards a course outside the MOUs very rapidly. But in the end, it was the Tsipras administration that led Greece into the third bailout program, which was the heaviest of all of them. But in a way, the Greek society didn't penalize him just for that, because as he himself claimed, he made his own self-reflection and said, he was misguided. He didn't expect that this is how things would turn out. But if you ask me, it's a concentrated resentment towards an economy which wasn't growing fast enough, policies that were very restrictive towards entrepreneurship, job creation wasn't fast enough, the growth of the economy was very constrained, contrary to expectations of a rapid growth of in excess of 4%. Last year, growth was down to 1.9%, and now just with the anticipation of political change, you see the stock market rallying, you see positive momentum in the economy on psychology alone.
So as we look at the different segments of society, what are the economic issues that matter most to older voters versus younger voters?
In a way, the younger voters got disengaged. They felt that their vote cannot change anything. I'm not even sure that we will have a massive participation of the youth in these elections, but it appears that the youth is turning a bit more conservative and is turning towards the New Democracy, the centre-right party that is most likely going to win the elections on Sunday. I think that with regards to the youth, they claim that they don't have access to well-paying jobs, and the efforts to raise the minimum wage hasn't touched them decisively. In a way, we need job creation for the youth that hasn't come around. And this is what New Democracy is promising, the centre-right party, together with the Movement for Change, I have to say. So these centre-right and centre-left are promising to deliver new jobs through a growth plan that includes tax cuts and other forms of measures that will boost the economy and fuel entrepreneurship.
And obviously, with any political promise, the devil really is in the details. So just how viable are these campaign promises that both parties are making when it comes to really solving Greece's biggest economic problems?
Look, I mean, if we look on the upside, on the positive psychology alone, the economy has changed massively. This has let's say, trickled down across a number of spheres, including the stock market, where you see a positive momentum. You're seeing transactions in the economy, real estate is on the up. We have a huge promise in the startup ecosystem, which is now leaving a renaissance, a third round of funding through the Equifund mechanisms, over 10 private funds, well-leveraged funding through European Union assistance. The EIB has presence, the EIF has presence, European Investment Bank, European Investment Fund. So in a way, the startup ecosystem also holds a huge promise, and the structure of the economy is changing. Now, in terms of policy per se, if you look at the two parties that are promising to deliver growth through their platforms, which is the center-right and the center-left, PASOK, Kinal, as we call it today, the Movement for Change, and New Democracy, they claim that targeted tax cuts are possible even in this constraining environment. And they have delivered very, very targeted programs with specific cost-effective measures that they say will be implemented in the very early days if they're allowed to have either a say or the first say in the government as a single-party New Democracy government, which is the most likely outcome of these elections. And it's worth perhaps noting this for our viewers that according to all the polls, the New Democracy Party will have a single-party government quite strong, even if we have a 7-party parliament.